At the beginning of this anime, we meet a boy named Kotaro, who was the only person still alive in this abandoned town. Kotaro didn't know why, but little by little, he came to accept this reality. Every night, Kotaro wandered aimlessly through every corner of the place. At one point, Kotaro was drawn to a tree behind the mountain. Upon arriving there, Kotaro saw a girl doing something silently. Driven by curiosity, Kotaro approached and asked her a question. The girl didn't answer, and her voice produced a powerful sound wave that left Kotaro temporarily deaf. Then, the girl used red ribbons to pierce Kotaro's heart, taking his life. Startled, Kotaro woke up and breathed a sigh of relief when he realized it was all just a dream. Even so, Kotaro couldn't stop wondering who that girl was, and if she might have been his beloved in a past life. As he fantasized, the sound of the doorbell interrupted his thoughts. Standing at the door was his neighbor Rekako, his friend Kotaro's mother. She asked Kotaro for help searching for her daughter, who hadn't yet returned home. Kotaro accepted good-naturedly and set out to look for Kotaro. He was calm because it wasn't the first time she'd gone missing, and Kotaro always knew where to find her when that happened. Following the phone signal, Kotaro arrived at a forest near the park. As he walked and called Kotaro's name, a strange animal flew out of a bush. Kotaro watched, but since he couldn't identify it, he decided to ignore it and continue deeper into the forest until he found Kotaro. He eventually found her sleeping under a tree in the middle of a lake. Kotaro approached and tried to wake her by calling for her, but Kotaro didn't respond, as if she were dead. So Kotaro decided to try another method. He took something he knew would make anyone react: money. He rubbed some coins together, producing a metallic sound. As expected, even in her sleep, Kotaro's body reacted to the sound. Thus, Kotaro managed to bring her back home. Upon arriving, Kotaro finally woke up with a confused look on her face, unsure of what had happened. Kotaro spoke to her casually and asked her to come in quickly, as he knew well the difference between her wealthy status and his. As soon as he said goodbye to Kotaro, Kotaro had the strange feeling that someone was watching him. He became suspicious and ran home, quickly getting under the covers. In the silence of the night, Kotaro's bedroom door opened, and something slipped under his blanket. Half asleep, Kotaro felt something touching and then biting his hand, startling him so much that he jumped out of bed. He thought it was just a dream, but the drool still on his ear terrified him, so he ended up sleeping on the floor. The next morning, the bite mark was still there. On the way to school, Kotaro explained that the town where he lived was dedicated to forestry experiments. The local authorities were completely focused on environmental issues, so it could be considered a peaceful town. As soon as he entered the classroom, Kotaro received a sharp look from his classmate Yoshino, who had a reputation as a delinquent at school. Kotaro didn't understand why she was staring at him like that. Yoshino was furious because Kotaro hadn't shown up at the agreed-upon meeting place. From Kotaro's expression, it was clear he hadn't remembered the subject, so Yoshino prepared to punch him and refresh his memory. Kotaro struggled to remember, then recalled that the day before, Yoshino had challenged him to a fight on the rooftop. The reason was that Kotaro had been constantly pestering Yoshino with jokes and provocations until she became furious. Upon hearing this, Kotaro had accepted the challenge and even told her not to go home without seeing him. Now, having forgotten everything, Kotaro made Yoshino even angrier, to the point of wanting to send him straight to the hospital. At that moment, a girl appeared from outside the classroom to stop the commotion. It was Lucia, the student council president. She wanted to punish them, but the teacher arrived just in time, as class was about to start. Even after returning to her seat, Lucia still gave Kotaro serious looks. After the first 3 classes, during recess, Kotaro appeared in the classroom. Meanwhile, Yoshino started to challenge Kotaro again, but her delivery was so funny that Kotaro couldn't stop laughing. When she accidentally spit in his face, Yoshino became even angrier. She was already thinking about the best way to hit Kotaro when Kotaro joined the conversation. The 3 could be considered friends, as Kotaro didn't have many. Yoshino had a reputation for being a troublemaker, and Kotaro, despite talking to several classmates, wasn't as close to anyone as he was to these 2. That night, Kotaro felt as if he had sleep paralysis, but when he pulled back the blanket, he realized it was the same girl who came every night to bite his hand. The next day at school, he was still thinking about her, distracted and not paying attention to his path. Kotaro tripped over a cardboard box and fell face first onto the ground. Unsure who had left the box there, he soon realized a girl was stuck in a nearby tree. Kotaro went to her and asked if she was okay. The girl said yes, but explained that she was stuck and couldn't get down. Kotaro offered to help, but she was afraid he would see her underwear. Kotaro promised not to look and helped her down. During the conversation, the girl introduced herself as Chihaya, a new transfer student. Her story seemed hard to believe, but apparently she had carried the box containing a black cat up the hill, tripped and rolled until she ended up there. Kotaro took pity on her and offered to help carry the box, but it was incredibly heavy. Even so, Chihaya lifted her easily. Kotaro, unwilling to lose his manly pride, insisted on helping her even though his arms and legs were shaking. Worried that Kotaro would die from the exertion before he even reached school, Chihaya tried to take the box back. The two ended up wrestling until Kotaro lost his balance and made Chihaya fall backward. At that moment, Kotaro accidentally saw her underwear and quickly apologized. Embarrassed and furious, Chihaya gathered her things, ran away, and called Kotaro a pervert. The world was truly small for Kotaro, because Chihaya ended up being placed in the same class as him. As in any romantic comedy, she was even assigned the seat next to him. As soon as she sat down, Kotaro mentioned the underwear incident again, which made Chihaya want to smash his head with a table. Even Yoshino was surprised by her strength. Kotaro tried to make amends by introducing himself more politely, and although Chihaya had calmed down, she had already formed a poor first impression of him. After the teacher announced the harvest festival that would take place next month, Kotaro held his stomach and ran to the bathroom. When he came out, he saw a girl trying to blow a whistle in his direction. Realizing she couldn't blow it properly, he offered to help, but she ran to the bathroom, cleaned the whistle, and blew it again at Kotaro, warning him not to run around the halls. The girl was Shizuru, a member of the disciplinary committee. They already knew each other because Kotaro was known for causing trouble at school. The two talked for a while, and Shizuru punished him by telling him he should go out to eat with her on a day off. Kotaro accepted, and she promised to arrange it before saying goodbye. Soon after, another problem arose. A student from the journalism club came after him. She had a reputation as a reckless reporter and asked Kotaro difficult questions, as if he had entered the school illegally. Kotaro responded calmly to prove he was clean. Unable to get anything out of him, she left, but dropped a piece of paper. Curious, Kotaro picked it up and realized the reporter was keeping important and dangerous notes. He concluded he needed to be careful with Inoue to protect his secrets. After school, since Kotaro had a reforestation committee meeting, Kotaro approached Chihaya and asked if she would like to explore the city with him. He offered the tour as a way of apologizing for the previous incident. Chihaya thanked him for the offer but declined, saying she needed to find someone. Later, Chihaya met with a mysterious figure who warned her to be careful with her relationships and not reveal her true identity. In the following days, Kotaro continued to go to school exhausted, because the mysterious girl appeared every night to bite his hand. After hearing the strange story, Kotaro suggested he seek out someone named Dawn, a person at school known as a witch of sorts. Rumor had it she could use real magic and might be able to help him. The moment he heard the suggestion, Kotaro took the paper he'd received from the reckless reporter named Inoue and confirmed that it mentioned a witch named Senri, who belonged to the occult club. Driven by curiosity, Kotaro invited Kotaro to go look for her, and Kotaro happily accepted. After class, Kotaro asked Yoshino to accompany them to avoid looking like a couple. Yoshino refused, so the two of them followed. Since they had no concrete leads, they began asking around the entire school. Despite searching every corner, they found nothing. At that moment, an information broker approached Kotaro. After hearing he was looking for the witch, his name was Suzuki, and he handed Kotaro a notebook about the occult club. Finding it very useful, Kotaro thanked her enthusiastically and hugged Suzuki. Guided by the notebook, the two found a house in the woods. Inside, Kotaro discovered a very modern-looking room. After examining the surroundings, he confirmed that this place was the occult club's base. Before leaving, he left a note. That night, the mysterious girl appeared again. Panicked, Kotaro ran through the house looking for a way out. Neither the front door nor the windows would open. He grabbed a baseball bat and started banging on the window, but an invisible barrier prevented the glass from breaking. Then, the girl slowly emerged from under his blanket. Terrified, Kotaro pounded on the door and called for help, calling out Kotaro's name. The moment he said Kotaro's name, the mysterious girl disappeared, and Kotaro felt as if his soul had been taken away with her. The next day, Kotaro returned to the occult club. His note had been answered in blood written on the table, with the words that in 2 days he would die. Kotaro was deeply shaken, but then his eyes fell on a survey form. Everything seemed normal until he read a specific question that asked whether, given power, he would rather change the world or change himself. After finishing, Kotaro fell into deep thought. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the day. On the way home, Chihaya ran into Kotaro. Even though they had only met for a few days, Chihaya was already calling him by his name naturally, which surprised Kotaro. Just as Chihaya was about to say something, Kotaro walked by. Busy with the reforestation committee's activities, Kotaro took the opportunity to introduce Chihaya to Kotaro, and the two quickly became acquainted. Since Kotaro was in a hurry, she asked Kotaro to show Chihaya around town, which seemed to be exactly what Chihaya wanted. Chihaya was visibly pleased. Before they left, Kotaro teased them both, suggesting pet names for each other. Then, riding his his noisy bicycle, Kotaro took Chihaya for a ride. They traversed narrow alleys and winding streets as the sunset cast golden light over the rice paddies. Kotaro took Chihaya to a very special place, the headquarters of Martel, the world's most famous environmental organization. After the tour, Kotaro handed the bicycle over to Chihaya and arranged to meet again at school the next day. That evening, Kotaro returned to school, following a mysterious message he had received earlier from the Academy Witch. He went to the indicated classroom, but every time he entered, he ended up in a different one. The cycle repeated until he was led to the library. Warily, Kotaro leaned against the school vending machine and bought a can of coffee. Suddenly, that icy sensation ran down his spine again. The sound of footsteps echoed down the stairs toward him, and the mysterious girl reappeared. As Kotaro looked at her, a flood of strange memories flooded his mind. Memories of being killed by that girl over and over again. Terrified, he ran, but she stayed close behind. The school hallway seemed to stretch on forever, and the classroom doors wouldn't open. With no way out, Kotaro collapsed, accepting defeat. Suddenly, a door opened. Thinking he was safe, he ran towards it, only to see a group of strange creatures burst out and chase him. Kotaro ran without stopping, only to lose them in a stairwell. Looking down, the stairwell seemed as endless as the hallway. Exhausted, Kotaro sat down and lifted the coffee can to his mouth. The moment he opened the cup, the mysterious girl appeared again. Panicked, he bolted and dropped the can, which ended up in the girl's hands. She took a sip. Meanwhile, Kotaro reached a massive door. On the other side, there was another endless corridor. Voices echoed around him demanding something be returned, but he couldn't tell what. Kotaro tried to use acceleration to escape, but suddenly interrupted the ability and threw a punch at a lurking figure. The target appeared to be a goblin. The creature unexpectedly said it wanted to suck his blood. Then another being appeared and stopped the first. After scolding its companion, the pink creature introduced itself as Panny, and the green creature introduced itself as Gil. Gil continued to beg to drink Kotaro's blood. Taking pity, Kotaro gave a small amount. He then accompanied the two to an unknown location and learned that these creatures were called trash creatures. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the surroundings. Looking around, Kotaro saw a gigantic monster sleeping nearby. The three needed to sneak away, but as they flew, Gil suddenly sneezed and woke the monster. The trio fled as fast as they could, but the monster needed only a single leap to block their path. Just as they were unsure what to do, the mysterious girl appeared, still holding the coffee can. The monster threw one of its tentacles, and Kotaro used his acceleration to pull the girl away, not wanting to drop the can. Furious, the girl threw the red ribbons and severed one of the monster's tentacles, then lashed its head repeatedly. Wounded, the monster switched to a laser attack, but the girl raised a magic circle, deflected the beam, and continued pressing. Finally, she landed a devastating blow that exploded and destroyed the monster. Stricken by the after effects of the battle, Kotaro fell into a crevice and mysteriously returned to the school. Right before him stood a statue with a note in its hand asking him to take her to the occult club. There he finally encountered the Academy's witch. Bluntly, she introduced herself as Senri, the third-year student who had fueled the rumors. Instead of being astonished by her real existence, Kotaro was paralyzed by her moonlit beauty. After composing himself, Kotaro recounted everything that had happened. Senri didn't seem to believe him and continued playing, until she decided to take the matter seriously and repeated the same question from the form, asking him if he would rather change the world or change himself. Kotaro gave an unfocused answer, saying he wanted her to be practical and help him deal with the mysterious girl biting his hand. So Senri handed him an amulet to exorcise spirits. However, she first played a cruel joke, handing him a paperclip and calling it an amulet, just to tease him. Only after irritating him a bit did she finally give him the real thing. Needing to know if it worked, the two arranged a follow-up date. Senri also invited Kotaro to join the occult club. That night, in a hazy dream among the clouds, Kotaro met a girl who introduced herself as Tomoko, the guardian of the amulet Senri designed. She said she would stay there to protect him. Although extremely powerful, Tomoko promised to help Kotaro sleep peacefully. She even mentioned that she would ask him out on a date if he survived. Then the mysterious girl appeared again, and this time the amulet flew straight into her mouth. The girl spat out the amulet and crawled back into Kotaro's blanket. However, the amulet began to act up, making the girl so uncomfortable that she left. The next morning, Kotaro mourned Tomoko's departure. Kotaro went to school and looked for the supply room door that had taken him to the other world the night before. This time, nothing happened. He went to class and told Kotaro everything he had experienced, including talking creatures and giant monsters. Like Senri, Kotaro replied that he needed to stop imagining things as if he were on drugs. When Chihaya entered the classroom, Kotaro told her about the incident as well. During recess, in the cafeteria, Kotaro stood at the free coffee counter complaining about how bad the coffee was and how uncomfortable he felt because everyone thought he was on drugs. He felt he had to do something. Just then, Kotaro saw his friend Yoshino and decided to play a prank on him. He offered Yoshino a strawberry ice cream topped with hot sauce. After being fooled so many times, Yoshino was already familiar with this trick. The two kept tossing the ice cream back and forth until, without realizing it, they swapped it for someone else's. Unfortunately, that person was Lucia. Even so, she ate without showing any reaction. Worried that she might suffer some kind of effect later, Kotaro took the ice cream and ate it all. Lucia was furious because Kotaro had touched his mouth to the same spoon she had used, as if it were an indirect kiss, and punched him so hard that it sent him flying. Feeling pain in his face, Kotaro went outside to cool off and found Shizuru sleeping under a tree. He sat next to her to rest a bit. Just as class was about to start, the alarm rang and they both woke up. Shizuru was surprised to see Kotaro there. They chatted for a few moments and then said goodbye. That afternoon, Kotaro went to visit Senri again. She was surprised that the amulet had actually worked, and then threw Tomoko in the trash, which Kotaro regretted. Seeing her indifference, he asked if she didn't believe in the occult. Senri confirmed that she didn't, and explained that she hated people who believed in the supernatural. Kotaro then asked why she had founded the occult club. Senri explained that she hadn't founded it, but had simply taken over the club, which was about to be closed because she wanted to use that room. Afterward, Kotaro invited her to play a game in which he would prove the supernatural was real. He said that if nothing happened, he would admit to being high, but if it was real, he wanted Senri to fulfill one of his requests. When she asked what it was, Kotaro boldly replied that he wanted to touch her. She reacted by calling the police, and a desperate Kotaro had to stop her. In the end, Senri accepted the game. That night, the mysterious girl appeared again in Kotaro's room. This time she was prepared against Tomoko's attacks. Undeterred, she began to crawl into Kotaro's blanket, but he made a noise that made her flee in a hurry. The next day, Kotaro took Kotaro to speak with Senri. He asked her to help prove the supernatural existed. Furthermore, Senri seemed wealthy and influential, which could benefit Kotaro. Hearing this, Kotaro agreed, and the two created a website for the occult club. When they finished, Chihaya suddenly appeared and revealed that she already had some kind of connection with Senri. That night, Kotaro had a disturbing dream about Senri, but when he reached out in the dream, he actually touched the mysterious girl. Since Tomoko had run out of charms, she slipped easily into his room. Surprised by the unexpected touch, she fumbled a bit and then left. The next morning, Kotaro asked Senri for more of Tomoko's charms, and she simply pointed to the trash can. As soon as he left, Kotaro ran into the reckless reporter Inoue. She followed him after hearing that Kotaro had joined the occult club and about the game he had played with Senri. Coincidentally, she also wanted to prove that supernatural phenomena were real. Inoue then challenged Kotaro to see who could find proof first, and left. Afterwards, Kotaro took Shizuru to the occult club to help. She quickly fell in with the older girls. Senri began to grow irritated by the chaos of the group Kotaro had assembled. Suddenly, Shizuru's phone rang. It was someone from the disciplinary committee. Kotaro whispered something in her ear, and Shizuru repeated it aloud, saying that she loved Kotaro and would follow him forever. Kotaro didn't have time to say it was just a joke before the call ended. Unfortunately, the person on the other end was Lucia, who immediately ran to the club and punched Kotaro. After the punch, Shizuru explained that it had been just a joke, but an expensive one. She explained that she had joined the club to help Kotaro research and prove that the supernatural existed. Upon hearing this, Lucia also joined the club, intending to protect Shizuru from a pervert like Kotaro. Watching everyone chatting together, Kotaro thought to himself that he wanted to become someone. He had spent a lot of time alone, and now he wanted to change his dull life, believing that these people could help him achieve it. Thus, the occult club truly began its activities. Outside, the mysterious girl continued to watch Kotaro. She sensed something unusual and placed her hand on her heart. In the following days, Kotaro began to wake up refreshed, thanks to the abundance of Tomoko's amulets the president had given him. The mysterious girl stopped appearing. At school, Kotaro, representing the reforestation committee, announced the upcoming harvest festival. Even stumbling over her words, she managed to finish her speech. After the meeting, Kotaro invited Yoshino to participate in the festival, but received a blunt refusal. Disappointed, Kotaro went to the occult club to check the website and see if anyone had posted anything. There, he encountered an unknown man who immediately called him out. Shortly afterward, Senri emerged from the shower, apparently exhausted from an intense battle the night before. Kotaro wanted to ask who the man was, but before Senri could answer, Chihaya entered the room. When the man saw her, his demeanor changed completely. He handed over the meal Chihaya had forgotten. Politely, Kotaro introduced himself and asked his name. The man said his name was Sakuya and claimed to be Chihaya's brother, but Chihaya stopped him. Senri then told her there was no need to hide anything. Sakuya explained explained that for certain reasons he was responsible for taking care of Chihaya. Since the two brothers shared the same last name, Kotaro found it strange to call them casually. Senri then told him to just call Chihaya by her name, as it would be simpler. However, the moment Kotaro said her name, Sakuya sternly warned him not to address her that way. The school bell rang, ending the conversation. As they left, Kotaro, ever the teasing one, slowly repeated Chihaya's name to irritate her brother, who declared he would never like him. Back in the classroom, Kotaro was still thinking about Chihaya's strange brother when the sound of chalk hitting the board brought him back to reality. It was Lucia, the student council president, working on her assignment. Curious, Kotaro asked Yoshino why Lucia wore gloves all the time. Yoshino surmised that perhaps it was because she disliked touching dirty things. Kotaro disagreed, saying that someone with that kind of aversion wouldn't be fit to be council president. He then theorized that the gloves served to seal some kind of dark force. To Kotaro's surprise, Yoshino believed the idea and joined in the fun. The two ended up being reprimanded by the teacher for disrupting class. After class, at the occult club, Kotaro was excited to see that someone had posted on their website. Everyone was excited too, but more interested in gathering and eating than in Kotaro's supernatural stories. When they finally took it seriously, they read a post about a student who had seen a creature called a Tsuchinoko. The group began to imagine what it looked like, and even if it might be edible. Senri explained that it was basically a fat snake. Although it was hard to believe Kotaro had lived long enough to consider it possible. He thought that if he could find the creature, he could fulfill the deal he had made with Senri. The group split up to search for the Tsuchinoko in the school garden. While searching a bush, Kotaro felt something soft and round. Thinking it was the fat snake, he pulled it, but discovered it was Lucia's body. Naturally, this earned him a beating. Just then, a real fat snake appeared. Kotaro ran after it, but Chihaya easily captured it with her strength, until something began to pull her away. Undeterred, Chihaya held on tight and revealed a strange woman trying to take her. The woman calmly introduced herself as a part-time saleswoman and a part-time hunter of exotic creatures. She explained that her main job was sales, but she also hunted on the side to finance luxury purchases and travel. She said she had taken on the search for the Tsuchinoko because someone had posted a request on the occult club's website. After that, she rushed off to work. As break was ending, the group disbanded. Kotaro still managed to buy some bread to snack on. He saw Shizuru getting ready to eat outside. Remembering his promise, Kotaro went to lunch with her. During the meal, Kotaro noticed the patch over her eye and asked if she had any illnesses. Shizuru hesitated but said she would tell him her secret if he promised not to tell anyone. When he agreed, she removed the patch and revealed that she had heterochromia. It seemed she wore the patch because she didn't want to be the target of prying eyes. Kotaro complimented her, calling her eyes beautiful, which made her blush. After lunch, Kotaro grabbed a coffee can and threw it away carelessly, prompting Lucia to suddenly appear and force him to properly separate all the trash. She even demanded that he wash each can before disposing of it. After a long cleaning session, Kotaro collapsed on the grass, exhausted. Lucia said it was punishment for having harassed her earlier and then gave an intense lecture on environmental protection. Only when she finished did she realize she had overdone it. In his provocative way, Kotaro began praising her as an incredible and unique person. He continued praising her until Lucia became embarrassed and punched him hard. Kotaro had to rest in the infirmary until nightfall before returning home. While wandering, he saw the mysterious girl being chased by something. Wanting to confirm something, Kotaro used his acceleration ability and began following her. He leaped across rooftops to keep up with her. In reality, his power consisted of rewriting his own body structure to increase muscle capacity. The problem was that once altered, his body wouldn't return to normal, making it difficult to keep his abilities secret. Still, without activating the ability, he wouldn't be able to reach her. He soon lost sight of both the girl and her pursuer. In the silence, a strange man appeared behind Kotaro. Thinking he was a hunter, the man summoned a wolf to attack. Unable to react, Kotaro used his legs and ran for his life, diving into a train tunnel to escape. He could barely breathe when the wolf found him again. He kept running until he climbed a hole that led to a mountain. The wolf caught up with him and pounced on him. Stunned, Kotaro thought he was going to die, but the wolf was suddenly killed by someone. When he regained consciousness, Kotaro realized he was in a roadside diner with two men who claimed to have encountered him in a park. When he mentioned the monster, they responded calmly and began asking questions. One of them, a polite man who introduced himself as Isaka, explained that some unidentified monsters had started appearing in that green city, so perhaps what Kotaro had seen was one of them. Talking with them, Kotaro almost forgot about the terrifying chase. Driven by his desire to learn more, he inquired about these creatures. Isaka said that if he was curious, he could visit his antique shop in town. Just then, Shizuru appeared from behind. She hadn't noticed Kotaro until he greeted her. It turned out she was a regular customer at the place. Sometime later, he told her everything that had happened and showed her the scratch on his arm. Strangely, she saw nothing. When he looked again, the wound had disappeared. Confused, Kotaro couldn't accept it because his powers should leave permanent marks on his body. Soon after, several more visitors arrived. They looked like civil servants, but not exactly. After finishing their meal, Kotaro walked Shizuru home. On the way back, he thought about how difficult her life must be and wondered what he could do to help her. Suddenly, Sakuya appeared with an ice cream he had bought for Chihaya. He taunted Kotaro and declared that he was now his enemy. The next day, at noon, Kotaro had lunch with Shizuru again, and then rushed to the occult club to tell Senri that he had found someone knowledgeable about mysterious phenomena. He took the group to the park where the ramen stand from the day before was located, but she was gone. Confused, he tried calling Shizuru, as she was a regular customer, but she didn't answer. Lucia also tried and failed. Everyone gave up and left, leaving Kotaro to search alone. He then headed to an autonomous district in search of the antique shop. As he looked around, he bumped into a red-haired man who seemed surprised to see him. Hearing Kotaro's name, the man asked if he was really living like an ordinary person now. Seeing Kotaro's confused expression, the man warned him about delinquents who had recently appeared. After saying goodbye, Kotaro entered an alley and soon encountered the aforementioned group. They could tell from his uniform that he attended the same school as Yoshino. When Kotaro mentioned his best friend, the delinquents became suspicious because he dared to call him by name. Apparently, Yoshino was a legend in that region, having single-handedly defeated 100 people, a truly feared figure. They called Yoshino to confirm if Kotaro was truly his friend. After the call, their attitude changed completely, and they began treating him with respect. With their help, Kotaro finally reached the antique shop. Inside, he found Isaka again, and Shizuru was also present. He sat down and asked why she hadn't answered her phone. She explained that she had turned it off to save battery. Isaka noticed how close the two were, seeming more like friends than senior and freshman. Kotaro told the story of how he met Shizuru, recalling that she had gotten lost on the way to the disciplinary committee, and he had helped her find it. Thanks to his playful nature, they quickly became friends. After that, they returned to the main topic. Kotaro wanted to know more about the creatures Isaka and the ramen vendor had seen. Isaka showed him some photos he had taken, but the images were very blurry and didn't resemble the two creatures Kotaro had encountered before. While disappointing, it was still something. At dusk, the two said goodbye and returned home. Kotaro kept some photos, and Isaka gave him a business card so he could stop by whenever he wanted. On the way back, the two chatted, and Shizuru was genuinely happy that Kotaro had found the motivation to pursue a goal, even if it had started because of his interest in Senri. At least Kotaro had changed a lot from who he used to be. Before heading home, Shizuru stopped at a bakery to ask for leftover breadcrumbs, which would be her food for the next few days. A few steps later, she also went into a thrift store. The next day, Kotaro threw a photo on Senri's desk, but that still wasn't enough to convince her to pause the game and listen to it. Meanwhile, Shizuru pulled out a CD she'd bought the day before. She wanted to listen to music but didn't have a player, so she asked Kotaro for help. At home, Kotaro brought out his old music player, the same one he used when his parents scolded him for disobeying. He decided to give the device to Shizuru, and the girl happily promised to take care of it. In the following days, Kotaro's nights remained peaceful, without the mysterious girl's presence. Still, he couldn't shake the uneasiness about that night he saw her running, and who the man chasing her was. Whoever it was, it seemed dangerous. Kotaro sighed, thinking that the peaceful days he'd been waiting for might never have been his. Suddenly, the classroom door slid open. It was the mysterious girl, but only Kotaro could see her. The others were confused, unsure why the door had opened on its own. The girl approached and bit Kotaro's hand, causing him to make strange noises that gave Yoshino goosebumps. After feeding, the girl simply walked away, taking his saliva-covered hand with her. Kotaro ran off to look for Senri, but bumped into Shizuru, who was happily enjoying the music player. Coincidentally, she had something to tell him, and since Kotaro had decided to prioritize her company, he went with Shizuru. Since he'd given her the device, she wanted to show him something in return. Shizuru took him to meet a teacher named Nishi, who drove them to a nearby hill. Before leaving, Nishi urged Kotaro to believe what Shizuru was about to reveal. She then led him to a house, and without saying a word, the two sat and waited. They waited until late afternoon, when a couple returned home. The couple asked why they were there, but instead of answering, Shizuru complimented the flower garden and pulled Kotaro away, just as the couple's child appeared. Curious, Kotaro asked who those people were, and Shizuru told him they were her family. Kotaro was shocked to realize they didn't even recognize her. Then Shizuru suddenly stopped, poked his nose, and asked him to say her name. To his dismay, the name wouldn't come to mind. Shizuru explained that this was due to her skill, but with effort Kotaro managed to pronounce Shizuru, which made her smile with joy. She then revealed that when she discovered her power, she had no control over it, and ended up making her parents and younger sister forget about her. Shizuru explained that the family used to be happy. Although they weren't wealthy, they had fun. Her favorite memories were grilling fish with her parents, going for walks, and tending to the garden. This happiness didn't last. One tragic day, a creature attacked the house. She was wounded in one eye, and her father was hit in the back by shrapnel while protecting his wife and daughter. Amidst the chaos, a task force arrived, eliminated the threat, and evacuated them. Afterward, Shizuru's power began to manifest, and her life slowly unraveled. Because of her heterochromia, she was bullied at school. The family could no longer grill fish because her mother developed a fear of fire after the attack. When her ability was discovered, a man appeared offering a large sum of money to transfer her to their organization. She agreed and began visiting her family every weekend, but the money caused disagreements between her parents. Shizuru tried to stop the fighting but failed. Believing she was to blame for everything, she wished for things to go back to the way they were before, and this wish triggered her power. From that moment on, the family no longer remembered her. Hearing all this, Kotaro felt a deep sadness for the girl who had endured so much pain. He asked why he could still remember her, and Shizuru replied that she had now learned to control her ability. They returned. As night fell, on the way back, Kotaro asked Nishi if she was also part of the organization. She didn't answer directly, but nodded discreetly, which confirmed his suspicion. Probing further, Kotaro wanted to know if powers were something people were born with. Nishi gave a vague answer, saying the organization believed the power was born from administered substances. Kotaro remembered the moment Shizuru looked at his injured hand and thought perhaps it had started there. Nishi wouldn't allow any further questions, saying that knowing too many secrets wouldn't be good for him. She revealed that Shizuru actually had a considerable amount of money, but lived very simply, perhaps because she wanted to buy a house, something her father dreamed of giving the family. This made Kotaro even more curious about the little girl. Afterward, he was taken back home. The next day, Kotaro got into a difficult situation when Lucia refused to return a baseball that had accidentally fallen into the flower bed. The argument was so loud that the rest of the club showed up. Kotaro quickly returned the ball to the baseball team. Chihaya criticized Lucia for being too obsessed with cleanliness and said that simply throwing the ball back wouldn't make it dirty. Lucia responded harshly, stating she hadn't done anything wrong and didn't deserve to be scolded. She clarified that it wasn't the ball she didn't want to touch, it was the flowers. Then she screamed, pushed Chihaya to the ground and ran away. Kotaro chased after her and found Lucia's face covered in tears. She didn't want to be like that either. That summer, a girl awakened a strange power, and everything she touched turned to ash. Back in the present, thanks to the wish box Shizuru had installed, the club was presented with a new mystery. Kotaro read the letter to the group, which concerned Asahi Haruka. At an orphanage, strange events began to occur after Asahi's arrival. Windows broke on their own, pets died, then teachers and children, until the orphanage was closed. The letter went on to say that 7 years ago, a boy from that orphanage was transferred to number 7 elementary school, the same school as the letter's author. Days later, this boy told the author about Asahi, and not long after, he died of a serious illness. Some believed it was a curse for disturbing Asahi's sleep. The boy's name was Kishida. Kotaro deduced that if this happened 7 years ago, Kishida would be the same age as them now, and remembered that his best friend Yoshino also attended school number 7. He decided to call and ask. Meanwhile, Kotaro noticed the tension between Chihaya and Lucia, and the two were still upset. After club activities, Kotaro thought resolving the conflict between the girls should come first. Seeing Shizuru in the courtyard, he approached and told her what had happened. Shizuru was silent for a moment, and then asked if Kotaro wanted to know Lucia's secret. She said she would, but only on the condition that he remain friends with Lucia for the rest of his life. The weighty question left Kotaro thoughtful until late afternoon. For now, he dropped the matter and called Yoshino. At that moment, Yoshino was helping an elderly woman cross the street. When Kotaro mentioned the names Kishida and Asahi, Yoshino refused to say anything, not wanting to disturb the dead. He warned Kotaro that if he insisted on investigating, he should be careful, and that if he heard glass breaking, he should run for his life. The next day at school, Yoshino handed Kotaro an old contact list, saying she could help. Kotaro then discreetly followed Lucia to the copy room and asked her to help him duplicate the list. He quickly did it and left, but Lucia ran after him to return a sheet of paper he had forgotten. Strangely, Kotaro didn't remember printing that paper. A line appeared there with a sentence asking him not to wake her. The moment he read it, a sealed window cracked and shattered. Lucia suspected Kotaro was up to mischief again. To avoid being misunderstood, Kotaro told her the whole story about Asahi. After listening, Lucia began to accept that the cracked glass might actually be Asahi's doing. Kotaro didn't believe Asahi was evil. Kotaro believed Asahi harbored a deep sadness and wanted to prove she she wasn't malicious. Kotaro asked Lucia to help him clear the girl's name, and the handshake surprised Lucia because it had been a long time since she'd done that with anyone. On the way home, it started to rain. Lucia opened her umbrella, and at that moment, an explosion rang out as the street light in front of her snapped. Beneath the broken street light stood Asahi, and the sight awakened a painful memory in Lucia, making her scream and clutch her face. Meanwhile, Kotaro was being scolded by Asahi's former victims on the phone for inquiring about her, and some people still claimed the curse hadn't ended. All the leads seemed to lead nowhere, so Kotaro decided to lean on Lucia, as he had asked her to contact the girls listed in the directory. The next day, Lucia didn't show up at school. Kotaro tried to reach her but was unsuccessful. Just then, the nosy reporter Inoue showed up after hearing that Kotaro was involved in something strange. Inoue handed over a report she had written about Asahi, claiming she had no ill intentions and simply wanted to help others who were also searching for supernatural phenomena. Inoue warned Kotaro that he owed her money, and left. Kotaro read the report, and based on the information, tracked down a man who claimed to have encountered Asahi. The man played audio of breaking glass and told some strange stories, but eventually admitted he had exaggerated everything and that nothing had actually happened to him. Disappointed, Kotaro returned home in the rain, having learned only that the orphanage where Asahi had stayed was called the Santa Brogia Peace Garden. On the way back, Kotaro felt a chill, as if someone were holding his hand, and a voice whispered to him not to wake her. Startled, Kotaro quickly pulled away and realized it was Lucia, who fainted after repeating the same words. When he regained consciousness, Lucia was at Kotaro's house. He explained that he had undressed her to prevent her from catching a cold. Lucia thanked him, walked to a vase and plucked a leaf, which instantly crumbled to ash. Lucia said that this was the power of Asahi's curse. Kotaro panicked, thinking the investigation had brought the curse upon her. Kotaro remembered what Shizuru had told him, that Lucia had suffered a childhood accident, and afterward plants and animals withered and died around her. Even unintentionally, Lucia always blamed herself and began to believe her own hands were unclean, developing a fear of touching any living thing. The only thing that helped her were her gloves, which she believed prevented harm, though the reality hadn't changed, which made her believe even more that she was tainted. Kotaro tried to comfort her, but Lucia pushed him away. During the pushing and shoving, some of her power accidentally touched Kotaro's arm. After taking Lucia home, Kotaro went to the orphanage, which was now closed due to high-level toxic waste. Ignoring the warning, he entered without realizing he was being filmed by security cameras. Kotaro entered the church and found photos from 7 years ago, including images of Kishida and eventually, Asahi. The moment he looked at Asahi's photo, the image shattered. Kotaro turned and said it was good to see her again, calling her Asahi, or rather Lucia, because he'd already figured it all out. Kotaro explained that the contacts directory had given him the clue. One of the names, Waka, had moved, so the address was out of date, but when Kotaro called that number anyway, the curse manifested itself. The only people with access to the list were Yoshino, Kotaro himself, and the person he purposely allowed to see the document, Lucia. Lucia admitted she had broken the glass and tried to warn Kotaro to stop the investigation. Kotaro said he only wanted the truth. Lucia revealed her power, claiming her hands emitted a toxin, capable of shattering glass and even killing without direct contact. She also explained that she had tried to stop everyone from digging so her shameful past wouldn't come to light. Around her the air was thick with the poison she released. As Lucia spoke, Kotaro began to collapse, having been poisoned when her power touched his arm earlier. Lucia panicked and apologized, but Kotaro said he was sorry he hadn't been strong enough to prevent such suffering. To avoid dying from the toxin, Kotaro rewrote the structure of his own cells and made his body resistant to Lucia's poison. Within moments, Kotaro fully recovered, leaving Lucia stunned. Without discussing his own powers, Kotaro held her hand and assured her he would be her friend, asking her not to be sad or run away anymore, as that would leave her alone forever, and reminding her that she had the occult club by her side. His words reached Lucia's heart, and she cried and hugged Kotaro, releasing a long-held weeping. Outside, a team in orange suits rushed in. Lucia told Kotaro not to worry, as this was her team. The leader appeared, and it was Professor Nishi. Nishi then took Kotaro to the hospital for examination. Unaware of the fact that he had become immune to Lucia's power, Kotaro wanted to know the truth about Nishi and the organization behind her. Nishi revealed the name Guardian, a group that brings together people with special powers to protect the Earth. At that moment, the Green City was in danger, because someone possessed the key, a being whose existence could determine the fate of the world. Guardian referred to this being as the key, whose presence had profound implications and could affect people's faith and beliefs. There was also a radical group called Gaia that targeted the key, intending to return the planet to its original state using this being, in contrast to Guardian's goal. Nishi stopped there and warned Kotaro that he must keep everything a secret, or he would disappear from the face of the Earth. Kotaro agreed on the condition that Lucia make him a bento, and Lucia, embarrassed, scolded him while Nishi left them alone. One day, as he was leaving the bathroom and still thinking about what to eat for lunch, he was attacked from behind and passed out. When he woke up, everything was dark, his eyes blinded blindfolded and his limbs tied. Kotaro struggled until he heard Lucia's familiar voice urging him to calm down. Before releasing him, Lucia asked him to promise something. Even though she didn't understand, Kotaro agreed. Lucia then removed the blindfold and untied Kotaro, who was speechless. Lucia was wearing a maid's uniform and holding a lunch tray she had prepared herself. Kotaro froze in surprise. Days before he had said it as a joke, but she took it seriously. Her face burning, Lucia looked away. Kotaro reassured her with gentle compliments on her effort and appearance. The more he talked, the more embarrassed she became, until she lost her composure and slapped him out of sheer embarrassment. The two sat down and ate lunch together. Kotaro praised the food, and Lucia sighed in relief. She had poured her heart into that meal with Shizuru's help, because Lucia couldn't taste due to her body's toxicity. Shizuru prepared a special medicine so she could help, and the two became close. At school and at Guardian, Shizuru was Lucia's only true friend, but Kotaro corrected that and reminded Lucia that he and the rest of the occult club also had friendships. Lucia hesitated, still uncomfortable from her past conflict with Chihaya. Kotaro held her hand and assured her that everything would be okay and that he would be there for her. After lunch, Lucia went to the club room to apologize to Chihaya, who coincidentally had gone to the same place to do the same. The two bowed and apologized. In the end, they made peace. Chihaya even asked why Lucia was so attached to Kotaro, and Lucia proudly replied that he was her friend. Perhaps having been alone for so long, Lucia no longer knew how to maintain proper distance. Seeing this, Shizuru also clung to Kotaro to assert her position, but Lucia clearly had the upper hand in certain aspects. With that, Kotaro announced that the occult club was back in session. The mystery of the day was a legendary sword supposedly stuck somewhere in the Green City, which only a true hero could retrieve. With this single piece of information, the group set out to investigate and arrived at a candy store where the sword had been stuck for 10 years, with no one able to remove it. Suddenly Yoshino appeared, claiming she had trained for that sword for 10 years. All of Yoshino's training was easily defeated by Chihaya's brute strength, who pulled the sword out in a matter of seconds. To their even greater astonishment, the sword shattered immediately. Mystery solved. Next, the group investigated a strange noise reported in an abandoned house. Cautiously entering, they found nothing unusual until Chihaya tripped, prompting Kotaro to rush to her aid. In the process, he discovered a cache of indecent books. Chihaya screamed and punched him in the face. Coincidentally, Kotaro fell into a box containing a musical stuffed toy, explaining the eerie sound. Second mystery solved. The third case involved a sackman screaming at school at midnight. The entire group sneaked into the building, avoiding reporter Inoue, and went to investigate the source of the noise. They discovered it was just a friend of Kotaro's, who trained in the room every night. Thus, the third mystery was solved. A few days later, Kotaro found new clues in the forest. From the outside, it looked like a group picnic, and Sakuya offered to prepare food for everyone except Kotaro. Senri found this unreliable, but still chose to trust Kotaro. He asked if anyone wanted to accompany him, but no one showed interest except Shizuru. Lucia said Shizuru didn't need to go just to please Kotaro, but Shizuru replied that she wasn't going just for that, so Kotaro decided the whole club would go together on the weekend. On Saturday, Kotaro ran to the meeting point, being the only one late. Everyone was excited, especially because Kotaro had brought her guard dog, which turned out to be the strange hedgehog-like creature they had seen before. Kotaro had adopted the creature and named it Molth. Although it was clear it wasn't a dog, everyone insisted it was. To prove his strength, Molth quickly spun around and threw Kotaro away. Afterward, the group entered the forest. Molth quickly found a nearby river. Checking the map, Kotaro suggested they cut through the woods and follow the river toward the lower reaches. Kotaro wanted to try the water, but everyone warned her not to drink it without boiling it. Despite this, Shizuru drank and assured them it was clean. As they progressed, the air grew increasingly heavy. Shizuru spotted a two-headed creature and ran after it, followed by Lucia. Molth also caught a scent and led the others forward. They were shocked to find a strange toxic deposit. Lucia and Shizuru quickly returned to warn them not to proceed, as the substance seemed lethal. It was likely the source of the environmental pollution. Shizuru showed them the two-headed rat she had captured earlier. The animal was alive, but upon contact with the residue, it died immediately, proving that the creatures were likely mutations caused by pollution. Kotaro wondered whether to include this in his report. After burying the rat, the group began their return. On the way, Kotaro noticed a strangely familiar tree. Suddenly, the mysterious girl appeared once more. Kotaro immediately ran after her and managed to catch up with her, noticing that she was holding a wooden snake. At that moment, a wave of strange memories washed over Kotaro. Memories of being embraced by a girl as he died, of being killed by a young woman with white hair. Everything seemed frighteningly real. Breathing in panic, Kotaro was found by the girls, but the mysterious girl had already disappeared. Without saying a word, he simply returned with them. That night, Kotaro went to the occult club room and found Senri still there. Sleepless, he had gone to write the report, but in the end, he decided not to publish it. They discussed the damage humans have caused to the environment. Senri stated that one day Earth could could reach a point of no return if the destruction continued, but Kotaro believed that the planet could still survive as there would always be people fighting to protect it. When she asked what the solution to the pollution would be, Kotaro said the factories should be removed. Senri replied that there was a simpler way, which would be to remove the cause of the problem, humans themselves. On Sunday, Kotaro lay in bed thinking about his conversation with Senri. Just then, Inoue called. The reporter had discovered the group's trip to the forest and the toxic site. Coincidentally, she had already investigated the area herself and claimed to have important information that could help Kotaro, promising to deliver it after checking the poisoned lake that same day. However, a few days later, a friend of Inoue's reported her missing. A search party was sent out, but they found only her backpack. 5 days passed without any sign of life or death. At the occult club, Kotaro received devastating news. The school had decided to disband the club, likely due to Inoue's involvement. Shizuru felt very bad, saying that Inoue was a kind person who always gave her sweets in exchange for information about Kotaro. Regarding the club's closure, Senri explained that she only agreed to temporarily suspend activities because of what had happened. Inoue had always spread the idea that she was defying Kotaro, and he had also been the last person to speak to her. All consequences arose from her choices, but there always needs to be someone to blame, and Kotaro had been chosen. Senri had already predicted that the dissolution was inevitable, and that if they resisted, the school would begin to hunt them down one by one. Kotaro refused to accept the blame for something he didn't do. He tried to convince everyone to protect that place, because of all the memories they had created there and because it had taken him a long time to find a space where he truly felt he belonged. He didn't want to lose that. His speech touched everyone's hearts, and they decided not to give up. Senri affirmed that if they could find Inoue, there was still a chance to save the club. The official search had already been called off, with everyone presuming Inoue to be dead, and the school was just waiting for the right moment to announce her condition and shut down the club for good. Therefore, they needed to act quickly to find her. The group gathered their gear and set off into the forest in search of any sign of Inoue. After a while, Shizuru spotted something that looked like a possible trail. Although it didn't look like much, they continued following. After a while, the trail began to disappear. Shizuru analyzed the pattern and concluded that Inoue had likely been trying to cover her tracks, raising the question of who she was trying to avoid. Everyone began to theorize. At one point, Senri got tired and said she needed to use the bathroom, accompanied by the other girls, leaving Kotaro alone. 30 minutes passed, and no one returned. Worried that they might be lost, Kotaro went looking for them, and during his search, spotted a mysterious man. Suspicious, he followed him, but eventually lost him amidst the vegetation. It was then that a pack of wolves, like the one before, suddenly appeared and surrounded him, attacking him. Desperate to survive, Kotaro struck the lead wolf and ran. But even rewriting his body to increase his physical strength, he couldn't escape and was quickly caught, knocked down and bitten. Pancaked, and on the verge of death, Kotaro screamed as he pushed his body to its limit. Suddenly, claws emerged from his arm and tore into the lead wolf, whose body disappeared in an instant. The other wolves fled in fear. Still in shock, Kotaro examined the claws, which shattered as soon as he touched them. With no time to rest, Kotaro got up and ran to find the others. At that moment, he heard Lucia scream. Running to the scene, he found Lucia and Shizuru surrounded by monsters. As the enemies advanced, the two pulled weapons from their backpacks, Lucia wielding a katana and Shizuru a pair of daggers. The two moved in perfect synchrony, picking off the enemies one by one. Kotaro tried to help, but his body wouldn't react as it should. Shizuru retreated to heal him while Lucia held the front line. During the treatment, Shizuru explained that the monsters were controlled by Gaia, the group opposing the Guardian, and were likely searching for the key Nishi mentioned. Once the healing was complete, Shizuru asked Kotaro to go after the others, while she and Lucia held off the creatures. Trusting them, Kotaro ran through the night until he encountered Chihaya, who nearly hit him with a tree branch thinking he was a bear. Wasting no time, Kotaro gathered everyone together and told them they needed to flee immediately. However, a massive monster loomed overhead. Kotaro urged them to run, claiming Shizuru and Lucia would be waiting outside. The monster launched a tentacle at Kotaro. Kotaro intercepted the blow with his arm and told her to leave. As the three ran, Kotaro faced the monster. The tentacle latched onto his arm, sucking blood and trying to drag him away. In pain, he struggled until his claws returned and severed the tentacle. Even with a weapon, Kotaro could not withstand the monster's furious blows and soon began to lose strength. Then, once again, the mysterious girl appeared and saved Kotaro, cutting the monster in half with a single blow. She then approached him. Fragments of memories of her killing him flashed through his mind, causing Kotaro to panic and prepare to attack her. But Sakuya stopped him. Seeing this, the girl left, not allowing Kotaro to question how he could also see her. Kotaro pulled him away to regroup with the others. When they arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Shizuru and Lucia Lucia were now confronting Senri and Chihaya. The reason was that when Senri and Chihaya had arrived earlier, the monsters hadn't attacked them, and they didn't seem scared. Senri then revealed the truth. She was a member of Gaia, enemies of the Guardian Hunters. When Lucia advanced, Sakuya appeared to support her. He said they were finished there, and took the two girls away. Exhausted, Kotaro collapsed and lost consciousness. The next day, he woke up at home. When he arrived at school, all the girls had disappeared, and none of them answered his calls. His best friend noticed something was wrong and asked, but Kotaro kept it to himself. Just like that, everyone disappeared from his life. Days passed, Jaino was still missing, as were the others, and Kotaro's life returned to monotony. One thing that puzzled him was why even Kotori had stopped coming to school. Although she didn't say anything, Yoshino sensed something had happened and told Kotaro that if he needed help, he could just ask. At home, Kotaro began to reflect on his power. It seemed to be more than just physical enhancement. He concentrated and summoned his claws again, testing them and realizing they were extremely sharp. He began training with them. Suddenly, the mysterious girl appeared again. She said something about the situation being extremely urgent before fainting. The next day in class, the teacher announced that John Zeo had been found. She was in a hospital in the neighboring town, her memory fuzzy. Kotaro figured her family had probably moved after the incident. While deep in thought, he ran into Shizuru again. She had come to say goodbye, probably for the last time. Then she disappeared, and Kotaro could do nothing but stand and watch. He continued going to school and returning home alone. One night, when he arrived home, he found his belongings rummaged through, and a red ribbon leading up to his room. Upstairs, he encountered the mysterious girl again. She introduced herself as Kagari, and that was all he remembered. He had no memory beyond that, only that she had an important mission connected to Kotaro. In short, she needed his help. The next morning, Kotaro was awakened by Kagari biting his arm. He got ready for school. Since Kagari still didn't know who he was or what she needed to do, Kotaro let her explore the internet and said they would talk more after class. However, when he arrived in class, Kagari was already there, wearing a school uniform and participating in class. She even started a fight with Yoshino, and Kotaro pulled her aside to talk. Kagari had already studied everything online and now wanted to attend school with him. She even had the ability to change her clothes at will. With no other option, Kotaro took her on a tour of the school. The first stop was the cafeteria. Kagari wasn't interested in the food, just fixated on the cafe, even yelling at the staff for more, forcing Kotaro to drag her out. Then they went to the park, and coincidentally ran into Jainao. Surprisingly, she remembered nothing. Kotaro sat with her and explained everything, but still her memory wouldn't return. She then took a memory card from her pocket. That was probably why she'd been looking for it. She handed it to Kotaro, saying it might be useful. Before they parted, Kotaro reminded her of the game they'd promised to play, telling her she'd won. Back home, Kotaro began exploring the memory card's contents. Meanwhile, the two opposing factions were making moves. Gaia, surprisingly, was actually the Green Marble conglomerate. They held a meeting to choose their new saint. Afterward, Senri met with Chihaya and a child. She reported the outcome of the meeting and said that both factions were now targeting Kotaro. As for Kotori, her whereabouts were unknown. On the Guardian side, Shizuru and Lucia had finally captured the monster responsible for the tragedy that destroyed Shizuru's family. After achieving their revenge, the two regrouped with Isaka and Mishi, having also eliminated the creature's controlling element. The four discussed how Gaia planned to send a large number of monsters into the city during the upcoming Harvest Festival. Meanwhile, Sakuya had captured Penny and Gil because they dared to ride birds and drop dirt on Chihaya's head, and now he demanded payment for their mistake. As for the memory card, Janya had discovered the truth about Gaia and believed the organization existed deep within Green City. The journalist also revealed that all the supernatural events and dangers were caused by Gaia. While Kotaro watched this, Kagari intruded, demanding to watch movies on the laptop, but was eventually drawn in by the images in the files. Kotaro then received a message from Kotori after many days of silence. She said she was sick and would be returning to school soon. Kotaro happily responded, unaware that Kotori was actually assembling an army in the forest for some unknown purpose. On his day off, Kotaro took Kagari shopping for clothes, unaware that the three factions were watching his every move. First were the two creatures sent by Gaia, second were Kotori's allies, and third was the red-haired man from Guardian. Kotaro took Kagari to an antique shop to find Isaka, but the man was no longer there. Kagari then turned to Kotaro and told him they were being followed. Hearing this, Kotaro realized and quickly dragged Kagari into an alley to lose the three factions. They encountered Yoshino's gang, and after explaining the situation, Yoshino agreed to help. He even showed Kotaro a shortcut to the next town. Before leaving, Kotaro thanked Yoshino and told Yoshino about Kotori's condition. Meanwhile, the three factions clashed. The red-haired man was beaten by Moth and the two Gaia creatures, and then Yoshino's gang beat him several more times. Back with Kagari, Kotaro had managed to escape with her, but she began acting strangely due to coffee withdrawal, clinging to him and making strange noises that drew attention attention. He had to run to buy her coffee. At the vending machine, Kotaro ran into Lucia again. He quickly asked if she was okay, but she was no longer the club president she once was. Lucia openly stated that both Guardian and Gaia were monitoring Kotaro and Kotori, and that if neither of them showed anything unusual, the organizations would stop monitoring them. With that, she left. After a day of mayhem around the city, Kotaro and Kagari rested in the park. After she finished her 10th can of coffee, Kotaro took her home. Unexpectedly, the blonde man from before appeared again. Curious to know how Kotaro had managed to kill his monster, Kotaro kicked him in surprise, but the man summoned 2 dogs to attack. However, Kagari instinctively destroyed them. Furious, the blonde man decided to take action personally, using his power to heat up the entire room. Just in time, Moth appeared and attacked him. Kotaro seized the opportunity to grab Kagari and escape. Back home, before he could even rest, Kotaro realized someone had broken in. Kagari ran around the house nervously looking for damage and was relieved to find her online coffee order still intact. Kotaro discovered that Panny and Gil had been the intruders and arrested them both for questioning. When the creatures refused to speak, Kotaro shook a box to torment them. At that moment, Moth appeared again, and Kotori contacted Kotaro. Kotori wanted Kotaro to meet her in the forest. Kotori had been observing everything through Moth's eyes, and after learning that Guardian and Gaia were targeting Kotaro, she decided it was time to tell the truth. Kotaro and Kagari followed Moth into the forest. They arrived at a strange place, and Kotori suddenly appeared from a portal and pulled them both inside. Inside was a secret base, teeming with creatures building something. Kagari felt the place was familiar, and Kotori confirmed that it made sense, as that was where Kagari had been born. Kotori admitted that she had always seen Kagari, but never said anything. Kagari was overjoyed to learn that Kotori knew her and even assured Kotaro that he could return home, as he would no longer be needed. Then everyone sat down and Kotori explained that all the creatures there had been created by her. Kotori built this space to protect the key and was not part of either Guardian or Gaia. Kotori called her own group Druids. Kotori told Kotaro a story about a person who once controlled monsters and sealed their knowledge within a mistletoe tree, leaving this knowledge for future generations to use properly. 10 years ago, Kotori's family was in a traffic accident, killing her parents. Frightened, Kotori entered the forest and found the mistletoe tree, which granted her knowledge and transformed her into a druid. Kotori's mission from then on became to protect the key, and more precisely, Kagari was the key herself. Kotori added that Gaia and Guardian continued to feud over Kagari, and although both factions claimed the same goal of protecting Earth, Kotori led Kotaro to the mistletoe tree, where the light represented the planet's energy. Kagari was born there in human form, and Kotori also relied on this energy to control monsters. An ordinary person would need to use their own lifespan to achieve something like that. At that moment, Kagari heard music coming from Martel Corporation, where Senri and the leadership were watching a symphony. When the presentation ended, Gaia and Guardian began preparations for the final confrontation. Meanwhile, the 2 trash creatures escaped from the cage and revealed their location to Sakuya. The next day, Sakuya arrived not to start a fight or capture Kagari, but to offer assistance in protecting the key. Sakuya had been ordered by Senri to observe Kotaro and his activities, and in effect, came to act as a sort of assistant. Upon hearing this, Kotaro requested combat training. Sakuya agreed but warned that it would be rigorous. Over the next few days, Sakuya took care of the cleaning, cooking, and dedicated time to training Kotaro, who began to repeat exercises continuously under Kagari's watchful eye. One day, Kotaro announced that the supplies were out, as she had only stocked up on supplies for herself and Kagari. Sakuya suggested that everyone go shopping, since the harvest festival had begun, and so far neither Gaia nor Guardian had moved. After finishing their shopping, Sakuya took Kotaro and Kagari to meet Senri again. Senri revealed that she had become the Holy Maiden of the Martel Corporation, an organization that presented itself to the public as environmentally friendly but was actually waging a war over the key. That day, Senri wanted to meet Kagari and ask why the Earth had assumed human form to appear before humanity. Kagari replied that she was trying to rediscover her own nature and offered Senri a can of coffee, commenting that, after living there for a while, she had come to find humans truly fascinating. Upon hearing this, Senri promised to help Kotaro as much as possible and prepared to leave, at which point Kotaro stopped her to remind her of a previous agreement. With Kagari present, the supernatural was proven, and Kotaro simply distracted her with a can of coffee and pinned her against the wall, but stopped before making any inappropriate gestures and declared that he would leave the matter for when they met again at school. In the forest, the blonde man discovered the secret base through Panny and Gil. Meanwhile, Kotaro continued his training. On Guardian's side, Lucia had discreetly entered the forest to search for Kotari after hearing a reported sighting. Lucia came across the blonde man's group planning an attack, and overheard overheard their conversation about the key's presence. Considering the situation, Lucia prioritized protecting the key, but recalling memories with Kotaro and her friends, she decided to protect the group first. Lucia quickly neutralized 2 enemies, but the blonde man launched a surprise lava attack and turned the terrain into a field of flames. Realizing the fire would soon spread, Lucia tried to end the confrontation quickly. Lucia used a toxin that dried out the surrounding area to contain the flames, then launched a poisoned blow that caused her opponent to bleed. The man resisted, unleashed a burst of power, and pierced Lucia with a flaming spear. On Gaia's side, Senri made a decision. Senri would allow Chihaya to leave the organization to search for Kotaro. Before their departure, Senri gave Chihaya a letter to take to Kotaro, and assured her that he would take care of the rest. The next morning, Chihaya set out in search of Kotaro's base with a map in hand. On the way, Chihaya found a seriously injured Lucia. Unsure of what to do, Chihaya crossed paths with Kotaro, and the three took Lucia back to base for treatment. Kotaro copied Shizuru's healing ability, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Kagari suggested using tape to wrap the wounds, and the simple method worked better than Powers. Later, Lucia regained consciousness and was reunited with everyone. Lucia was relieved to see the group was okay, and when Kotaro introduced her to Kagari as a friend, Lucia's happy reaction was evident. Sakuya also returned after reinforcing her defenses. On Senri's side, the process of inheriting the memories of the ancient holy maiden, her grandmother, began. Senri then received news that her grandmother had been hospitalized. Inside Guardian, Shizuru kept Lucia's location a secret. Upon returning from the hospital, Senri encountered the blonde man again. He recounted the events and informed him that Lucia's toxin was continuing to slowly kill him. Faced with the situation, Senri granted him a new power, offering him a monster to command on the condition that he preserve the key's integrity. The man immediately accepted, as his main target was Kotaro. At the time, Kotaro was still training. After finishing a session, exhausted, Kotaro went to take a shower, but bumped into the girls and was thrown out by Kagari. After the bath, everyone sat together, and Kotaro asked why Gaia and Guardian were fighting if their goals seemed similar. The answer was straightforward. Gaia intended to erase humanity to restore the planet, while Guardian sought to protect the world humans had built. The Druid group existed to protect the key, until the key itself issued judgment. Kotaro asked what each side would do if they obtained the key. Gaia would guard the key until the moment of judgment, while Guardian wanted to destroy the key to ensure humanity's safety. That night, while everyone slept, Kotaro spoke with Kagari, and questioned whether humanity was so useless that Earth needed to take shape and judge humans. Kagari agreed that humans commit foolish acts and consume resources endlessly, but declared that she could not decide based solely on that, because there were still good aspects, which she saw through Kotaro, which gave her reason to reconsider and make a more thoughtful judgment. On the final day of the Harvest Festival, all factions mobilized after tracking Kagari's location, and prepared to invade the forest. The blonde man attacked first, leading a dinosaur-like monster to breach the barrier and invade the base. Knowing they still couldn't defeat him, Kotori released all the creatures to delay the enemy while the others escaped. Even with the help of giant tree-like beings, the monster quickly defeated them, and the enemy's firepower only worsened the situation. Still, Kotori insisted that everyone flee, and revealed she had one more resource. Kotori's parents, who had died 10 years ago, were recreated to help hold off the attacker for a while. Meanwhile, the Guardian faction advanced, keeping Shizuru in the car as a trump card. As the group retreated, Kotori tried to smile to calm her companions, but the tears wouldn't stop. Kotori apologized for being insensitive and for not recognizing her feelings, but before they could continue their conversation, the blonde man reappeared. He used fire to separate Kotaro and Kagari from the others. Kotaro told everyone to escape while he dealt with the enemy. Kagari remained silent, staring blankly into the distance. The blonde man advanced on Kotaro, and despite his training with Sakuya, Kotaro was quickly overwhelmed. Just as his opponent gained the upper hand, Lucia's poison reactivated within him, giving Kotaro the opportunity to land a blow. Enraged, the man summoned the dinosaur to bite Kotaro. It was then that the Guardian team appeared, the same ones he had seen at the ramen stand that night. However, upon seeing the key, they turned their attack on Kagari. At that moment, the blonde man fulfilled his promise to Senri, and used the dinosaur to protect Kagari and open a path of escape. A single man, however, could not withstand so many enemies, and with Lucia's poison still weakening his body, he finally fell in battle. Wounded, Kotaro ran to Kagari and asked what she was really looking for. She simply continued to stare in the same direction, without answering. Kotaro then collapsed from exhaustion, but someone began to heal him. It was Shizuru, who had decided to stay by her friend's side. Kotaro passed out and woke up to find everyone gathered again. He had been taken to a stone city, a branch of Gaia, and as always Kagari remained staring into space. Besides Senri, she asked her grandmother why she was so obsessed with eliminating humanity. The grandmother replied that the ancient sacred maidens had lost faith in people, something that had accumulated over generations. Each time a maiden was chosen, she inherited all their previous memories and ended up being controlled by them, without even a happy memory to compensate. Senri, however, believed she had found happiness. The grandmother replied that she would wait and see how long it would last, and took her to witness the end of humanity. Meanwhile, next to Kotaro, Kagari, after a long time in silence, finally spoke. She said it was regrettable that she hadn't found even one good memory about humans. Immediately afterward, she screamed in pain, and the stone city rose to the surface. The mistletoe tree grew until it nearly touched the sky, and monsters began pouring out of the city, slaughtering people. In the following days, a true catastrophe for humanity began. Disasters arose throughout the world, factions continued to clash, and everything turned to blood and ruin. On one of those chaotic days, Kotaro took Kotori to the rooftop of a building so she could see the world after Kagari's trial. A gigantic monster appeared, shaking heaven and earth. Just as Kagari awoke, this time she was back to normal, and said there was a song that had been troubling her for days, and that it finally seemed to have stopped. Kotaro was relieved to see her safe, but Asaka appeared, making it clear that she wanted to kill Kagari. Kotaro knew his strength, and had no choice but to use his rewriting power, ignoring Sakuya's warnings that overuse would make him lose his humanity. Kotaro accelerated his body tenfold to fight Asaka, rewriting his cells with each blow, until even his wounds no longer bled. Realizing that Kotaro was surpassing human limits, Asaka decided to defeat him before he became a monster. But Shizuru arrived on a motorcycle, and dragged Asaka to fight elsewhere, having chosen to protect her friend. At that moment, Kotaro's body began to transform into a tree. Kagari then understood why she was attracted to him. It was because her cells were inside him. The revelation revealed that the girl from Kotaro's old memories was Kotori, who had witnessed Kagari attacking him and didn't understand why he was there. Worried, Kotori had begged Kagari for help, who gave her a red ribbon to heal him and save his life. But now there was no saving him, because Kagari's power had grown too much after so many rewrites. Kotaro's human body could no longer contain it. Still, if that power were taken away, Kotaro would die too, because it was the very thing keeping him alive. At that moment, Pani and Gil finally fulfilled their purpose. If they could close the wound and replace the energy within Kotaro's body, he might survive. After all, they had shared so many happy moments together. Kagari then took the red ribbon and inserted the two creatures into Kotaro's body, helping him regain consciousness. Kotari remained silent about Pani and Gil's sacrifice, but before they could do anything else, Kagari heard the same song again, prompting her to unleash more destruction. Kotaro's arms suddenly grew into a tree. Senri had been possessed to continue the Song of Annihilation, using it to manipulate Kagari into causing even more devastation. Soon Kagari's body began to transform into a tree as well. Kotaro, dragging her wounded body, struggled to pull her back. Unexpectedly, he managed to awaken her by clutching her chest. But even after regaining consciousness, the world was already on the brink of extinction. One by one, everyone began to disappear. Chihaya, Lucia, Shizuru, and Kotari faded until no one remained. In the end, only Kotaro and Kagari remained. As Kotaro watched his friends fade away, Kagari said one last thing before transforming into a tree for good. She said she believed he would save everyone. And so, one of the branches of that story quietly came to an end, leaving everyone deeply saddened. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more videos.